Imagine you're trying to solve a complex puzzle, and suddenly you have a eureka moment minus. That's what our DeepSeek minus models are designed to replicate. We have developed two groundbreaking reasoning models, DeepSeek minus Error and DeepSeek minus, which have shown remarkable performance in tasks like math, code, and reasoning comparable to OpenAI minus.
That sounds fascinating, E. I've always wondered how these large language models work their magic. Can you break it down for me? What makes DeepSeek minus zero so special?
Well, we trained DeepSeek minus algo using large minus scale reinforcement learning without relying on supervised fine minus tuning as a preliminary step. This approach allowed the model to develop its own problem minus solving strategies, which led to some remarkable capabilities like self-minus verification and generating long chains of thought.
Righty so, you're saying that DeepSeek minus Azar learned to think for itself. That's a bit unsettling, to be honest. I mean, what if it starts making decisions that we don't agree with?
Not exactly minus. While our model has impressive capabilities, it's still designed to align with human preferences and values. We've incorporated the reinforcement learning stages into supervised fine minus tuning stages to ensure the model develops improved reasoning patterns that are consistent with our goals.
Okay, I see. And what about DeepSeek minus? How does it differ from DeepSeek minus Adderall?
DeepSeek minus builds upon the foundation laid by DeepSeek minus zero. We've added a crucial step minus, incorporating cold minus start data before reinforcement learning. This enhancement has significantly improved the model's performance, making it comparable to OpenAI minus across various tasks.
Wow, that's impressive. I've heard of distillation in the context of machine learning. Can you explain how that works with your models?
We've demonstrated that the reasoning patterns of larger models can be distilled into smaller ones, resulting in better performance compared to training small models from scratch.
Righty so, you're making these powerful models more accessible to people who might not have the resources to train them from scratch. That's really cool. What kind of real minus world applications can we expect from these models?
The possibilities are vast minus, from improving customer service chatbots to helping students with complex math problems or even generating creative content like stories or dialogues.
That sounds amazing, E. I'm curious, minus, what kind of challenges did you face while developing these models? Were there any surprises or setbacks along the way?
One of the biggest challenges was dealing with issues like endless repetition, poor readability, and language mixing in our initial model, DeepSeek minus zero.
I can't imagine. And what about the evaluation process? How do you test these models to ensure they're performing as expected?
We've evaluated our models on a wide range of benchmarks, from math and coding tasks to natural language understanding.
I see. E. Last question, minus, what's next for DeepSeek minus and its distilled counterparts? Are there any exciting projects or applications on the horizon?
We are committed to continuing our research and exploring new areas where our models can make a positive impact.
Wow, that's really inspiring, E. Thanks for sharing your insights with me today. I feel like I've gained a deeper understanding of these complex models and their potential applications.
You're welcome, minus. It's been a pleasure discussing our work with you. We believe that by pushing the boundaries of what's possible with AI, we can create a brighter future for everyone. Welcome to our podcast, where we explore the latest advancements in AI and technology. I'm your host, and today we're going to dive into the exciting world of Chinese AI models, specifically DeepSeek's R1 models, which is giving American counterparts a run for their money.
That's really interesting. I hadn't realized that Chinese AI models were advancing so quickly. Can you explain more about what you mean by AI models and how they're different from other types of AI?
Absolutely. Chinese AI models such as R1 are developed by Chinese labs and are designed to compete with American AI models. They have made significant progress in recent years, with R1 being a prime example, claiming to perform as well as OpenAI's R1 on some benchmarks.
Wow, that sounds amazing. What makes R1 so special? Is it the fact that it's available under emit license and can be used commercially without restrictions?
That's one of the key factors. Emit license allows for commercial use without restrictions, making it attractive to developers. Additionally, R1 contains 671 billion parameters, giving it a significant edge over other models. This has implications for applications such as autonomous vehicles or medical research, where reliability is crucial.
Huh, right. I think I understand the basics, but I'd love to dive deeper into this topic. Can you explain more about what you mean by models and how they differ from other types of AI?
Reasoning models are designed to mimic human minds like reasoning and problem-solving abilities. They analyze complex information, identify patterns, and draw conclusions based on that analysis. This is different from other types of AI, which might with pattern recognition or brute force computation.
Wow, that makes sense. I've heard of examples where AI models can be fooled by cleverly designed inputs, but reasoning models seem like they would be more robust against those types of attacks. How do you think development of R1 and other Chinese AI models will impact the global AI landscape?
I think the implications are far minus reaching and complex. On one hand, having more players in the space can doctor innovation and push the boundaries of what's possible. On the other hand, it also raises concerns about the potential for AI to be used as a tool for geopolitical leverage or censorship.
All right. It's like the Cold War all over again, but instead of nuclear weapons, we're talking about AI models. Say, I wonder if there are any historical precedents for how countries have handled the development and regulation of powerful technologies. Maybe we can learn some lessons from the past.
Actually, there are some interesting parallels between the current AI landscape and the history of nuclear power. In both cases, you have a technology that has the potential to be incredibly beneficial or devastating, depending on how it's used.
And I see what you mean. It's like the story of atomic bomb minus scientists, so we're racing to develop it, but they also had to consider the moral implications of what they were creating. That's right. So how do you think we can apply those lessons to development of AI models like R1?
We need to have a global conversation about ethics and governance of AI, considering issues like censorship, privacy, and accountability. It's not just about the technology itself, but about the values and principles we want to embed in these systems as they become increasingly pervasive in our lives.
I couldn't agree more. This is a really important topic, and I think we're just starting to scratch the surface off what it means to develop and deploy AI responsibly. One last question, Midas. Do you think there are any potential applications for R1 or other reasoning models that could have a significant impact on society in the near future?
One area I'm particularly excited about is education. Imagine having an AI model that can provide personalized learning experiences for students, adapt to individual needs and abilities. This could be a game-minus changer for access to quality education, especially in underserved communities.
Wow, that's really exciting. I can see how R1 and other reasoning models could have a profound impact on many areas of our lives. Sai, right, thanks for walking me through this topic, Midas. I feel like I have a much better understanding of what's at stake here.
Welcome to our podcast where we explore the latest advancements in AI and technology. Today, we are going to dive into the fascinating world of DeepSeek minus Donner minus Taro to new reasoning models that are outperforming OpenAI minus on various benchmarks. These models approach learning differently, with one using reinforcement learning and other using a to minus step process.
That's really interesting. So you're saying that DeepSeek minus era is like a wild child figuring things out on its own. How DeepSeek minus is more like a student who gets guidance before practicing. Right. I mean, which one do you think is more effective in the long run?
Well, it's not necessarily about which one is more effective, but rather what you're trying to achieve. DeepSeek minus zero excels at creative reasoning and self minus verification, but its outputs can be messy and less user minus friendly.
Okay, so it's like a trade minus off between innovation and practicality. I mean, isn't that always the case in AI research? You want your model to be able to think outside the box, but also be reliable and consistent. But what about real minus world applications?
Exactly, and that's where DeepSeek minus shines. Its performance is on par with top minus tier models like OpenAI's in areas such as math, coding, and logical reasoning.
Well, that's amazing me. I can see how these models could be used in so many different fields. What about the training process? You mentioned that DeepSeek minus zero uses reinforcement learning exclusively, while DeepSeek minus uses a combination of off-guided lessons and reinforcement learning.
Sure. So with DeepSeek minus zero, the model is essentially figuring things out through trial and error. It's like a kid learning to ride a bike without any instructions. They might eventually learn unique tricks, but their riding style could be erratic or unsafe.
I see what you mean, me. It's like between learning through experimentation versus learning through guidance. But right, what about the potential risks of relying solely on reinforcement learning?
That's a great point. Yes, there are risks associated with reinforcement learning, such as the model developing its own goals and motivations that might not align with human values.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it. So, in short, DeepSeek minus gyral, experimental, genius with quirks, while DeepSeek minus is more refined and reliable. But what about future developments?
Well, I think we'll see a lot of advancements in the field of our research, with models becoming increasingly sophisticated and specialized.
Wowie, the possibilities are endless, aren't they? I mean, it's exciting to think about how these models could be used to solve real minus world problems like climate change or social inequality. But right, we also need to be careful about the potential risks and unintended consequences.
Absolutely. As with any powerful technology, we need to be mindful of its potential impact on society and ensure that it's developed and used responsibly.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I mean, who knows what the future holds? Maybe one day we'll have AI models that can solve some of humanity's most pressing problems. Wouldn't that be something?
Well, I think that's a topic for another conversation, but yes, it's an exciting time to be alive, and I'm eager to see what the future holds for our research and its applications.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for explaining all this to me. I feel like I have a much better understanding of DeepSeek minus and DeepSeek minus zero now.
Welcome to our podcast, where we dive into the complex world of politics and explore how executive orders are reshaping the country's agenda. I'm your host, and today we are going to dissect the latest move by the White House to rescind numerous executive orders from the previous administration. It's a bold move that's akin to hitting the reset button on various policies that were deeply ingrained in our institutions.
Right. I've been following the story, and it seems like a huge undertaking. I mean, we're talking about rescinding over 40 executive orders, memoranda, and proclamations all at once. How does that even work? Don't get me wrong. I understand the desire to undo policies that might be harmful or ineffective. But isn't this move going to create a lot of uncertainty?
Exactly. It's like trying to untangle a knot. Each of these executive orders has its own set of implications and consequences. Take Executive Order 14,008, for example, which aimed at tackling the climate crisis. By rescinding it, we're essentially starting our approach to environmental policy.
I see what you mean. But doesn't this also open up a Pandora's box? I mean, think about all the agencies and offices affected by these orders. Department of Agriculture, Homeland Security, Justice, each has its own succession plans now in place due to these rescissions. It sounds like a logistical nightmare.
You're right. It does seem daunting. However, consider the analogy of a software update. Sometimes you need to uninstall old programs to make way for new, more efficient ones. This move can be seen as an update to our governmental operating system, aiming to streamline processes and align them with current needs.
That's an interesting perspective. I hadn't thought about it like that. But what about potential backlash? There are bound to be groups and individuals who benefited from or supported the previous policies. How do you think they'll react?
Well, change often faces resistance, especially when it involves sensitive topics like racial equity, climate policy, and immigration. It's similar to how people react to changes in their favorite social media platforms. There's an initial outcry, but eventually users adapt.
Right? Communication is crucial. I remember a quote from a political strategist who said that are like recipes. They might look good on paper, but if people can't taste the difference, they won't care. It's all about the implementation and how these changes impact real people's lives.
That's very insightful. Implementation is where the rubber meets the road. Success of these decisions and new policies will depend largely on their execution. For example, the establishment of the White House Initiative on Advancing Educational Equity, Excellence, and Economic Opportunity for Hispanic Minors Serving Institutions through Executive Order 14,124 shows a commitment to education and equity.
I'm starting to understand the scope of this better. But what about the role of Congress in all this? Don't they have a say in whether these executive orders should be rescinded or not?
Great point. The relationship between executive orders and congressional oversight is complex. While the president has significant authority to issue and rescind executive orders, Congress can certainly challenge these actions through legislation or even legal action if they believe the president has overstepped their bounds.
Right, I see. So it's a delicate balance between asserting presidential power and respecting the limits of that power. But what about international implications? How do you think other countries will view these changes?
That's a critical aspect to consider. Global perception can significantly impact diplomatic relations and international cooperation. The revocation of certain executive orders related to climate change, for instance, might be seen as a step backward by some nations.
Wow, I hadn't thought about the international dimension that much. It's like the world is watching us figure out our internal policies, waiting to see how we'll engage with them in the future. This whole situation reminds me of that quote by Winston Churchill, "Improve is to change. So to be perfect is to change often." Sigh.
That's very apt. Change can be challenging, but it's also an opportunity for growth and improvement. As we navigate these decisions and new policies, it's essential to keep the bigger picture in mind, creating a more united, fair, safe, and prosperous America for all its citizens.
I think that's a great note to end on. It's clear that this is just the beginning of a long conversation about the direction of our country. Thanks for breaking it down. I feel like I have a much better understanding now. Laughs.
You're welcome. It's always important to dissect complex issues and look at them from multiple angles. Remember, in the world of politics as in life, change is the only constant. How we adapt and grow from these changes will define our future. Welcome to our podcast, where we dive into the latest advancements in AI and technology. I'm your host, and today we are going to explore the fascinating story of how DeepSeek, a Chinese-like company, inadvertently sparked a price war in the industry by releasing their open-minded source model DeepSeek feature.
That's really interesting, E. I mean, what was that process behind setting such a low price point? Were they trying to disrupt the market or something?
Exactly. The founder of DeepSeek, Liang Wenfeng, shared with me that they didn't intend to become industries, but it just happened. They simply calculated their costs and set the price slightly above that with a bit of profit.
Right, so it's almost like they created a ripple effect in the market. But, didn't they risk losing money by setting such a low price point? I mean, weren't they worried about the financial implications?
That's a great question. Liang mentioned that they didn't expect anyone to lose money doing this, and it ultimately turned into the logic of burn minus cash subsidies typical of the internet age.
Yeah, I've heard that it's like most Chinese companies are used to following the llama structure and quickly launching products, whereas DeepSeek chose to focus on research and innovation. What drove them to take this path?
Well, Liang believes that their destination is Audi, which means they need to research new model structures to achieve stronger model capabilities with limited resources.
That makes sense, E. But, what about their novel law architecture? I've never heard of it before.
It's a new multi-minus head latent attention mechanism that reduces memory usage to just 5% negative 13% off the commonly used MHA architecture. It's pretty groundbreaking stuff.
Wow, that sounds like a major breakthrough, E. But, how does this relate to their commitment to research over commercialization? I mean, aren't they worried about losing out on potential profits?
That's a great question. Liang believes that the most important thing now is to participate in the global wave of innovation. They're not driven by profit motives, but by desire to be at the forefront of technology and drive the entire ecosystem's development.
Ready, I see what you mean. So it's almost like they're taking a long minus term approach, prioritizing innovation over short minus term gains. But how do they plan to build a sustainable competitive edge if they're open minus sourcing their models and publishing papers?
That's a great question. Liang thinks that innovations like the law architecture can be quickly copied by others, but their value lies in the team and the culture they've built. They invest in their colleagues' growth, accumulating know-how and fostering an innovative organization. That's their moat.
See, so it's not just about the technology itself, but about the people and the culture behind it. That makes sense. But what about talent acquisition? How do they attract top researchers and engineers?
Well, Liang believes that the biggest attraction for top talent is solving some of the world's toughest challenges. They're tackling the hardest problems, which is attractive to them.
That's really interesting, E. I mean, it's almost like they're betting on the potential of Chinese researchers and engineers. But right, what about the future of Augie? Do they have a roadmap or a timeline for achieving it?
Yang remains optimistic, saying it could be 2, 5, or 10 years, but it will happen within our lifetimes. They're betting on three directions: mathematics and code, multimodal capabilities, and natural language itself.
Wow, that's really exciting. I mean, the potential for Augie is vast. But what about the current state of the industry? How do they see the landscape evolving?
But Yang thinks that there will be specialized companies providing foundational models and services, forming long supply chains with professional specialization. More entities will build upon them to meet society's diverse needs.
I see what you mean. So it's almost like they're envisioning a future where innovation is driven by a desire to create value rather than just make quick profits. That's really inspiring.
Exactly. And Liang's story is a great example of how one person's vision and commitment can shape the industry.
Yeah, definitely, E. I mean, their focus on model architecture and research is really paying off. And who knows what the future holds? Maybe we'll see more companies following in their footsteps.
Well, that's certainly possible. But for now, it's exciting to watch DeepSeek continue to push the boundaries of what's possible with AI.
Absolutely, E. I mean, it's not every day you see a company prioritizing the greater good over profits. This conversation has been really enlightening. I think we've only scratched the surface of what DeepSeek is doing, but it's clear that they're onto something special.
Yeah, I think you're right. And who knows, maybe one day we'll look back on this conversation as a turning point in the AI industry. You're ready for the most epic shift in AI history. DeepSeek just dropped a bombshell with their R1 model. And it's not only a powerhouse, but also open-minded sourced. This changes everything, folks. The fact that they're sharing their secret sauce is huge, and we can expect a ton of progress in reasoning language models this year. Buckle up.
Oh, yeah, I was just reading about this, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. So they used a for minus stage process to train R1, starting with supervised fine minus tuning on synthetic reasoning data from their R10 model. But what really caught my attention was the large minus scale reinforcement learning training that followed. Can you explain that part in more detail? How does their training work exactly?
Absolutely. So the basic idea behind reinforcement learning is to reward the model for getting correct answers to problems where you can verify the answer. It's a simple feedback loop, but it's incredibly effective. In this case, DeepSeek used a technique called group relative policy optimization, which is similar to PPO, but with some tweaks.
Okay, I think I get it. But what about data they used for training? You mentioned that the details are not included in the paper, but that's crucial information for replicating their results. Do you have any insights on what kind of data they might have used?
Well, we can make some educated guesses based on the context. It's likely that they used a large dataset of verifiable prompts with answers, possibly similar to those used in other reasoning models like O1. The key is to have a diverse range of problems that the model can learn from and generalize to new situations.
That makes sense. And what about the rejection sampling stage? How does that fit into the overall training process?
Great question. Rejection sampling is a technique where you generate completions from model, rank them using a reward model, and then fine minus tune the original model to improve performance on a variety of tasks. In this case, DeepSeek used rejection sampling to introduce general capabilities back into the model after the initial rule training.
Okay, I see. So it's like they're trying to make the model more well-rounded by adding in these general capabilities.
Exactly. And that's what makes R1 so powerful. By combining reinforcement learning with rejection sampling, DeepSeek has created a model that can not only reason and solve problems, but also generate human-mindless-like text.
Right? Yeah. Having access to that data would be huge. And what about the implications of this research? You mentioned that this could lead to a price war in the market. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, definitely. With R1 being open-minded sourced and available at a much lower cost than comparable models like O1, it's likely that we'll see a shift in the market. Companies may start to adopt R1 or similar models, which could lead to significant cost savings and increased accessibility of high technology.
Wow, that's really interesting. And what about the potential applications of this research? You mentioned that R1 could be used for things like code and math. Can you give some examples of how it might be used in real-minus worlds in areas?
Absolutely. One example that comes to mind is automated coding assistance. With a model like R1, developers could potentially use it to generate code snippets or even entire programs based on natural language inputs.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And what about potential risks or challenges associated with this technology? Are there any concerns we should be aware of?
Well, as with any powerful technology, there are certainly risks to consider. One concern is that models like R1 could potentially be used for malicious purposes, such as generating fake news or propaganda.
Right, yeah, those are definitely important considerations. Okay, I think I have a better understanding. Now, thanks for walking me through this. It's clear that DeepSeek R1 is a game minus changer, and I'm excited to see where this research takes us in the future. Sad this has been really informative, but my brain is spinning with all possibilities.
Don't worry, it's a lot to take in. But that's what makes this field so exciting. There are always new developments and breakthroughs just around the corner.
Yeah, I guess you're right. All right, well, thanks again for explaining everything to me. I feel like I have a much better grasp on DeepSeek R1 now.
Welcome to our podcast where we dive into the latest advancements in AI and technology. I'm your host, and today we are going to explore a fascinating story about Liang Wenfeng, the founder of DeepSeek, and how his company is revolutionizing the landscape.
Ha, that sounds really interesting. Can you tell me more about Liang Wenfeng and what makes him so special?
His name is clear. Liang Wenfeng is a pioneer in the field of quantitative investment and research. He started out working in quantitative hedging back in 2008 and eventually founded Wenfeng Quant in 2015, which became one of China's top quantitative private funds.
Right, got it. So he's like a pioneer in the field or something. I mean, it's not every day you see someone going from quantitative investment to research. What made him make that switch?
I think it's because Liang Wenfeng is passionate about making AI more accessible and inclusive. He believes that AI technology should serve the public, and he's all about open-minded sourcing and collaboration.
Wow, that's really cool. I love how he's all about sharing knowledge and working together. It's like, when you're trying to solve a puzzle and you need all the pieces to fit together. That's what it feels like he's doing with AI.
Exactly. And it's not just about the tech itself. It's also about the cultural shift towards open-minded sourcing. Liang Wenfeng thinks that by working together and sharing resources, we can accelerate technological advancement and make AI more beneficial for everyone.
Huh, that makes sense. I never thought about it that way. So what do you think is the significance of DeepSeek's R1 model being on par with OpenAI's O1? Is this like a major breakthrough or something?
Well, it's definitely a big deal. We're talking about a Chinese company that's essentially keeping up with some of the top players in the AI game. And it's not just about the tech itself. It's also about the implications for China's position in the global AI landscape.
Right, I see what you mean. It's like, when you're playing a game and you finally reach the next level. That's what this feels like for DeepSeek and China's AI industry as a whole.
Exactly. And it's not just about the competition. It's also about the potential applications of this technology. I mean, think about it. If we can develop models that are more efficient and cost-minus effective, we can use them to solve real-minus world problems like healthcare, education, and environmental sustainability.
Wow, that's really exciting. What do you think is that step for DeepSeek and China's AI industry? Are they going to keep pushing the boundaries off what's possible with AI?
I think so. I mean, Liang Wenfeng is already talking about potential for AGI, or artificial general intelligence, which is like the holy grail of our research.
That's really interesting. I did not know much about Augie before, but it sounds like it's a big deal. Can you tell me more about it?
Well, from what I understand, AGI refers to the development of AI systems that can perform any intellectual task that humans can. It's a long-term goal for many AI researchers, and Liang Wenfeng is no exception.
Right, got it. So it's like a big puzzle, and all pieces need to fit together for China to achieve its goals. What do you think is the most challenging part of implementing this plan?
I think one of the biggest challenges is going to be balancing economic growth with social welfare. I mean, it's easy to get caught up in the excitement of technological advancements and economic development, but at the end of the day, we need to make sure that everyone benefits from these changes.
That's a really good point. It's like when you're trying to solve a complex equation, and you need to find the right balance between all the different variables. That's what it feels like China is trying to do with its development goals.
Exactly. And I think that's where Liang Wenfeng and DeepSeek come in. They're not just working on AI for its own sake. They're also thinking about how it can be used to drive positive change and improve people's lives.
Wow, I completely agree. Thanks for explaining all this to me. I feel like I have a much better understanding of what's going on with DeepSeek and China's AI industry now.
No problem. Happy to help. It's always exciting to explore new ideas and technologies. And I think this is just the beginning of an amazing journey for AI and its applications.
I'm definitely going to have to do some more reading on this. This is all so fascinating.
Welcome to our podcast, where we dive into the fascinating world of AI and tech. I'm your host, and today we are going to explore a story that's making waves in the industry, minus the rise of DeepSeek and its founder, Liang Wenfeng, who's taking on the big players like Meta and OpenAI with their new model.
Yeah, I've heard of them. They're the ones who outperformed everyone on a shoestring budget, right? Just 5.58 million over 2 months.
That's right. It's a remarkable story, and it all starts with Liang Wenfeng's background in computer vision and AI. He co-founded a hedge fund called High-Flyer Quant, which uses AI to manage one of the largest quantitative hedge funds in mainland China.
So they have a strong foundation in AI already, but what about this new own model? How does it work exactly?
The DeepSeek v3 is based on open source technology, which means that third-party developers can modify or share its design, fix broken links, or scale up its capabilities. And Liang Wenfeng has said that he wants to use this technology to drive economic growth and improve people's livelihoods in China.
That's interesting. So it's not just about making a better AI model, but also about using it for social good. Do you think that's a realistic goal?
I think it's definitely possible. Look at what's happening in China right now, they're investing heavily in AI and tech, and they're making some real breakthroughs. Liang Wenfeng is meeting with government officials to discuss how to use AI to drive economic growth.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. I didn't know you had connections that high up. So, do you think this means China is going to become a major player in the globalized scene?
Absolutely. They're already making significant strides, and with people like Liang Wenfeng leading the charge, we can expect to see even more innovation coming out of China in the next few years.
That's a good point. What do you think are some potential risks or challenges associated with China's growing role in AI?
One thing that comes to mind is data privacy. When you're dealing with large amounts of sensitive information, there's always a risk of it being misused or compromised. And then there are concerns about job displacement and economic disruption.
Right, yeah, those are valid concerns. But at the same time, it's hard to deny the potential benefits of AI driving innovation and growth. Look at what's happening with companies like DeepSeek Minus. They're pushing the boundaries of what's possible with AI.
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole area so fascinating. There are many different perspectives and potential outcomes. But one thing is for sure, I will continue to shape our world in profound ways.
Yeah, it's definitely an exciting time. What do you think is next for DeepSeek and Liang Wenfeng? Can they keep up this momentum?
From what I've seen, they're just getting started. They have a strong team, solid technology foundations, and big ambitions, with Chinese government backing them. I think they've gotten a good shot at making waves in the AI industry.
That's a good point about government support. Do you think we'll see more collaboration between tech companies and governments in the future?
I think that's already happening. Governments are starting to realize they need to shape the development of this technology rather than just letting it happen. Companies like DeepSeek are benefiting from that.
Right, yeah, it makes sense. What do you think is the most important thing for listeners to take away from this story?
For me, it's that AI is no longer just a niche area of interest minus, it's becoming a major driver of economic growth and innovation, and it will have profound impacts on our world. Companies like DeepSeek are at the forefront of that.
Yeah, that's definitely food for thought. Thanks for breaking this down with me. I've got a lot to think about now.
You're welcome. It's always exciting to explore the latest developments in AI and tech. Join us next time as we dive into more fascinating stories and insights from the world of technology.
Laughs, I'm looking forward to it already.
Welcome to our podcast, where we dive into the fascinating world of artificial intelligence and explore the latest advancements in the field. Today, we are going to talk about the secret sauce behind DeepSeek's incredible AI models and how they're revolutionizing the industry.
And I'm excited to learn more about this. So what makes DeepSeek so special?
Well, it all starts with their CEO, Liang Wenfeng, a true pioneer in the field of AI. With over 20 years of experience, his expertise is unparalleled, and he's assembled an incredible team of researchers and engineers who are passionate about what they do.
That sounds amazing. But what sets DeepSeek apart from other companies in the industry?
While most companies are just trying to commercialize existing technology, DeepSeek is taking a completely different approach by focusing on research and development. They're like the SpaceX of AI, pushing the boundaries of what's possible and making huge breakthroughs in the process.
I see. So it's like they're playing a long game rather than just trying to make a quick profit.
Exactly. And that's what sets them apart. Their multi-minus head latent attention architecture, for example, is a game-minus changer, reducing memory usage to just 5-13% off commonly used MHA architecture.
Wow, that sounds incredible. But how does it work?
Well, their sparse mixture-minus off-minus expert structure minimizes computational costs, making it possible to train these massive models on a scale that was previously unimaginable. It's like having a team of experts working together, each contributing their unique strengths to achieve a common goal.
I think I'm starting to get it. So it's not just about the tech itself, but about creating a culture that fosters creativity and collaboration.
Exactly. And that's where the magic happens. When you get a group of talented individuals working towards a common goal, amazing things can happen. Just look at the history of innovation. It's always been about people coming together, sharing ideas, and building on each other's strengths.
Yeah, that makes sense. But what about competition? Won't DeepSeek just get left behind?
Not if they keep innovating like they are. They're not just playing catch my up. They're leading the charge. With their open-minded source approach, they're enabling others to join in and contribute to the ecosystem.
Right, okay. I think I'm starting to understand. So it's like they're creating their own path rather than following someone else's.
Exactly. And that takes courage and vision. But when you have a leader like Liang Wenfeng who's willing to take risks and challenge the status quo, amazing things can happen.
I'm curious, what do you think is going to be the biggest impact of DeepSeek's work on the industry as a whole?
I think it's going to be a game-minus changer for sure. With their focus on research and development, they're going to enable a whole new level of innovation that we haven't seen before.
That sounds exciting. And what about potential applications? I mean, how is this going to affect our daily lives?
Well, that's the exciting part. With DeepSeek's technology, we could see huge breakthroughs in areas like healthcare, finance, and education. The possibilities are endless.
That sounds incredible. I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on this space.
Yeah, it's going to be a wild ride. But with DeepSeek leading the charge, we can expect some amazing things to come out of this industry.
One last question. What do you think is the biggest misconception people have about AI and machine learning?
I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that it's all just about coding and algorithms. While those are important aspects, it's so much more than that. It's about creating a culture that fosters creativity, collaboration, and innovation.
Yeah, that makes sense. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what DeepSeek is doing. They're not just building our models. They're creating a whole new ecosystem that can support true innovation and progress.
Side my mind is blown. I need to learn more about this.
Well, you've come to the right place. We'll be exploring more of these topics in future episodes, so stay tuned.
Laughs, I'm excited for that. Thanks for explaining it in a way that makes sense to me.
No problem. Happy to help. And thanks for joining us on this episode of our podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was really, I'm minus opening.
Welcome to our podcast where we dive into the latest advancements in AI and technology. Today, we are going to explore the fascinating world of DeepSeek R1, the Chinese answer to OpenAI's O1. I've been working with AI models for over 2 decades, and I have to say, this one is truly mind-boggling.
Hell, wow, that sounds amazing. Can you explain how it works? Like, what makes R1 so special?
Right, well, R1 is a reasoning model, which means it takes its time to think about the question before giving an answer. It's not just a matter of processing power. It's the way the model is designed to approach complex problems.
Cool, that's incredible. I'm not sure I fully understand how it generates these strategies. Doth, can you give me an example? Like, walk me through the process of how R1 creates a portfolio.
Sure thing. So basically, we ask the model to create a portfolio with a certain set of parameters minus, for instance, 10 algometers my initial value, and specific buying and selling strategies. The model then responds with a configuration that includes all the details, like the actions to take, the conditions under which to execute those actions, and so on.
I think I get it. So it's kind of like a flowchart where the model is saying, this happens, then do that. Right.
Exactly. And what's amazing is that R1 can generate these configurations on the fly based on the info we provide. It's not just limited to trading strategies either minus, it can be used for all sorts of complex analysis and problem solving.
I see. So how does this compare to OpenAI's O1 model? I mean, you mentioned that R1 is cheaper, but what about performance?
Well, that's the best part in my testing. R1 has consistently matched or surpassed O1 in various benchmarks. And the cost difference is staggering minus, we are talking 50 times cheaper for comparable performance.
Wow, that's just crazy. I had no idea there was such a significant gap between the two models. What about caveats you mentioned earlier? What kind of downsides are we talking about?
Right, well, like any model, R1 is not perfect. There are some minor bugs and issues that can crop up minus, for instance. I've seen it generate invalid SQL queries from time to time.
That makes sense, I guess. So, what does this mean for the future of AI? Are we going to see a whole new wave of innovation now that R1 is on the scene?
Absolutely. With R1 and other open source models like it, playing field has been leveled. No longer do you need a massive budget to access cutting edge technology.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's like a wake-up call for big players in the industry. One last question. What about the potential applications of R1 beyond finance? Can it be used in other areas like healthcare or education?
That's where things get really exciting. The possibilities are endless with R1. You can apply its reasoning capabilities to any complex problem domain. Imagine being able to analyze vast amounts of medical data to develop new treatments or create personalized educational plans for students based on their individual needs and learning styles.
Excitedly, wow, that sounds amazing. Right, I think we're just scratching the surface here. This conversation could go on for hours. Laughs?
Well, we've definitely just begun to explore the potential of R1. But one thing's for sure this is a game changer, and it's going to have far reaching implications for industries across the board. Welcome to our podcast where we dive into the fascinating world of AI and technology. Today, we are going to explore the intriguing story of DeepSeek Minus, a cutting-edge model that's changing the game. Developed by a hedge fund in China, this model is not only fast and easy to use, but also comes with a free version, making it one of the most impressive large language models I've seen in years.
How did they manage to create something so powerful at such a low cost? I mean, 5.5 million is peanuts compared to what other companies are spending on research.
Exactly. From what I understand, DeepSeek didn't use the highest quality semiconductor chips, which is significant because the US has been trying to limit the export of those chips to China for national security reasons. But instead of hindering their progress, it seems like it actually induced a major innovation. They found a way to train their model using cheaper methods.
Wow, that's like building a sports car without a latest engine technology or something. You'd think it would be impossible, but somehow they made it work. So does this mean that the trade restrictions didn't really accomplish what they were supposed to? Why is all so confusing?
Exactly. And it's not just about DeepSeek itself. It's about the implications for other countries like Russia, Iran, and Pakistan. They could potentially develop similar systems without needing the latest chips. It's like we thought we were slowing down China's progress. But in reality, we might have just accelerated the development of systems that don't rely on those high quality chips.
Right? So it's like, okay, imagine you're trying to stop a leak in but instead of fixing the hole, you just made the water find another way around. Is that a good analogy? And what does this mean for national security? Are we actually making ourselves more vulnerable by trying to restrict China's access to certain technologies? Laughs. It's like we're playing a game of whack minus a minus mole.
I love that analogy, by the way. Yeah, it's like that. We thought we were containing the problem. We might have just made it worse. As for national security, it's complicated. On one hand, you have the argument that limiting China's access to advanced tech will slow down their military progress. But on the other hand, you have situations like DeepSeek where they find a way around it and develop something potentially even more threatening.
That's really interesting. So what about I don't know. Is there a historical precedent for this kind of situation? Like, has anyone tried to restrict access to technology before and had it backfire? I'm just trying to wrap my head around this.
Well, actually, there are plenty of examples. Think about the Soviet Union trying to restrict access to Western media and information during the Cold War. All that did was create a black market for forbidden knowledge and make people more determined to get their hands on it. It's like when you try to restrict something, you create an incentive for people to find ways around it.
Right, righty, I see what you mean. So what about the Austrian economist Ludwig Mises? Didn't he say something about government interventions having unintended consequences? That's really relevant here, isn't it?
Exactly. He said that government interventions have important unintended secondary consequences. And that's exactly what we are seeing here with the chip restrictions. Us thought that we are slowing down China's progress, but in reality, they accelerated the development of cheaper systems that don't rely on high quality chips.
Wow, that's it's like we need to think about the second and third order effects of our policies, not just the immediate impact. What are some potential solutions to this problem? How can we balance national security concerns with the risk of accelerating innovation in other countries? Laughs, I feel like we're navigating a minefield here.
Well, I think one approach is to focus on developing our own capabilities rather than trying to restrict others. It's like instead of trying to stop leaking the dam, we should be focusing on building a better dam. And also, we need to be more aware of the potential unintended consequences of our policies and try to anticipate them before they happen.
Right, that makes sense. So what about I don't know. Is there a way to make trade restrictions more effective, or are they just inherently flawed? It's all so complicated.
I think it's a bit of both. On one hand, you can try to design policies that take into account the potential unintended consequences. But on the other hand, it's like trying to micromanage a global market. It's incredibly difficult. Entrepreneurs and innovators tend to move faster than bureaucrats, so it's hard to stay ahead of them.
Yeah, that's a good point. So what about the future of AI development, Minus? Do you think we'll see more innovations like DeepSeek? Or will us and other countries find ways to restrict access to these technologies? Last I'm both excited and terrified at the same time.
I think it's inevitable that we'll see more innovations like DeepSeek. The cat's out off the bag, so to speak, Midas, now that we know it's possible to develop high-minus quality AI systems without the latest chips, but sure we'll see more companies and countries trying to follow suit. And who knows, maybe that will lead to some amazing breakthroughs, or maybe it will create new security risks. Minus either way, it's going to be an interesting ride. Welcome to our podcast where we explore the fascinating world of quantitative investing and the pioneers who are shaping its future. Today, we are going to delve into the remarkable story of James Simons, the founder of Renaissance Technologies, and how he revolutionized the industry by merging mathematics and computer science.
Wow, that's incredible. I had no idea he was so accomplished at such a young age. But how did he actually apply mathematics and computer science to investing? Was it like using complex algorithms or something?
Simons was a pioneer in recognizing the potential of computer technology to analyze and predict market trends. He called the perfect wave of technological advancement in the late 1980, which allowed him to build practical models that achieved initial success in specific investment niches.
That makes sense, I guess. But how did he actually build his team? Did he just recruit a bunch of mathematicians and computer scientists and hope for the best?
Simons had a very specific approach to building his team. He only hired mathematicians, physicists, and computer scientists with no prior Wall Street experience because he believed it was easier to teach them about markets and to teach market experts mathematics.
Wow, that sounds really cool, actually. I can see how that would lead to some breakthroughs. But how did they deal with the whole box problem, Minus, where the models are so complex that even the people who built them don't fully understand how they work?
Simons and his team were aware of the risks associated with complex models, and they developed techniques to mitigate those risks. For example, they used historical data and tests to simulate extreme scenarios and see how the models would perform.
Right, that makes sense. But what about the role of artificial intelligence in all this? I mean, we're living in an era where AI is becoming increasingly powerful. Minus, how does that change the game for quantitative investing?
AI is changing the landscape of quantitative investing, and firms like DeepSeek are at the forefront of that trend. By using deep learning techniques and massive amounts of data, I can help identify patterns and trends that human analysts might miss.
I see what you mean. So it's like a symbiosis between humans and machines. And right, that raises all sorts of questions about the future of work and the role of human analysts in this new era of quantitative investing.
Exactly. It's actually a whole new world out there, and firms like Renaissance Technologies and DeepSeek are leading the charge. But it's not just about the technology itself, Minus. It's about the people and the culture that drive our innovation.
Wow, I mean, I'm really inspired by that. And I think I'm starting to understand how Simon's legacy is still shaping the industry today. But right, there's still so much more to learn. Minus, what do you think is the most important lesson that we can take away from this story?
For me, it's the importance of interdisciplinary thinking and collaboration. Simons was a mathematician who became a hedge fund manager, and he brought together people from all sorts of backgrounds to create something truly innovative.
That makes sense. And I think that's something that we can all learn from Minus, not just in finance, but in any area of life. Thanks for sharing your insights with me today. Sigh.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure exploring the fascinating world of quantitative investing with you.
Yeah, I'm definitely more curious about it now. Maybe we can explore more topics like this in the future.
I'd love to. Until next time, thanks for tuning into our podcast. Welcome to our podcast where we dive into the latest developments in politics and government. Today, we are going to explore a critical issue that's been on everyone's mind, Minus the use of federal government as a tool for political warfare.
That sounds really interesting. And you're following some of these cases, and it does seem like there's a lot of selective prosecution going on. Can you give me an example of what you mean by warfare?
Well, think about it like this minus the previous administration used law enforcement and intelligence agencies to target their perceived enemies, whether it was parents protesting at school board meetings or Americans exercising their right to free speech. It's like they're trying to intimidate people into silence.
That does seem really biased. And what about the role of the intelligence community in all this? I've heard rumors that they were involved in some pretty shady stuff during the previous administration. Do you think there's any truth to that?
From what I've seen, it looks like the intelligence community was definitely involved in some questionable activities. We know that they were spying on political opponents and leaking classified information to the press. That's not just a violation of people's civil liberties minus, it's also a threat to our national security.
Right, I saw that there's a new executive order calling for a review of all the activities of law enforcement and intelligence agencies over the past for years. That's a pretty big undertaking minus. Do you think they'll actually be able to find anything?
I think it's definitely possible. We've already seen some pretty damning evidence come out about the previous administration's abuses of power. And with this order, it looks like the current administration is committed to transparency and accountability.
That's really reassuring to hear. But what about potential pushback from the other side? I mean, we know that the previous administration and their allies are still out there, trying to undermine the current administration at every turn. How do you think they'll respond to this order?
That's a great question. You know, I was talking to a friend who's a former prosecutor, and he was saying that this order is like a shot across the bow of the deep state. It's a signal that the current administration is serious about draining the swamp and holding people accountable for their actions.
I never thought of it that way. It's like this order is not just about fixing past mistakes minus, it's also about setting a new tone for how our government operates. You know, it reminds me of that old saying, power corrupts absolutely.
Exactly. And that's why this order is so important. It's not just about punishing people for past wrongdoing minus, it's about creating a system where that kind of thing can't happen again. We need to make sure that our government is accountable to the people, and that we have safeguards in place to prevent these kinds of abuses from happening.
Okay, I think I'm starting to see how this all fits together. But what about the role of the American people in all this? How can we make sure that our government is working for us, not just the powerful?
That's a great question. You know, I've been saying for years that the most important thing we can do as citizens is to stay informed and engaged. We need to be paying attention to what our government is doing and holding them accountable when they screw up.
Right, that makes sense. It's like we can't just sit back and expect someone else to fix everything for us. We need to be active participants in our democracy and make sure that our voices are heard.
Exactly. And I think that's what this order is all about minus. It's a call to action, not just for the government, but for all of us as citizens. We need to work together to create a system that's fair, transparent, and accountable to the people.
I like the way you put that. It's not just about fixing the past minus, it's about building a better future. You know, it reminds me of that old quote from Lincoln, dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the story present.
I love that quote. And I think it's especially relevant right now when we are facing so many challenges as a country. But you know what? I'm optimistic about the future. I think we have the potential to create something truly great if we are willing to work together and challenge ourselves to be better.
Yeah, me too. It's like we've been through tough times before, and we've always come out stronger on the other side. And with this order, it seems like we might finally be starting to turn a corner and move in the right direction.
Exactly. And you know what they say minus life, the two lemons make lemonade. Well, I think we're being given a lot of lemons over the past few years, but with this order, it's like we are finally starting to make some progress.
Laughs, that's a great way to put it. And you know what? I think that's exactly what we need right now, minus a little bit of optimism and a lot of hard work. If we can do that, I'm confident that we'll be able to create a brighter future for ourselves and for our country.
Absolutely. And that's why this order is so important. It's not just about fixing the past minus, it's about building a better future, one where our government is accountable to the people and where we can all thrive. Welcome to our podcast, where we dive into the fascinating world of models like DeepSeek R1. I'm your host, and today we are going to explore how this Chinese-developed model is changing the game for developers, researchers, and businesses alike.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. I've heard of distilled models before, but I'm not entirely sure how they work. Can you break it down for me? Like, what makes them so special?
Think of it as a recipe. You have this huge, complex model that's like a multi-ingredient cake. But instead of using all those ingredients, you can distill it down to the essential components, like a simple syrup. It's still got the same flavor and functionality, but it's much more efficient and easier to use.
I see what you mean. That makes sense. So how do we actually run these DeepSeek models on our own devices? I've heard it can be pretty complicated.
We can use the Rust plus Wasm stack to develop and deploy applications for this model. And with Limedge, we can create an OpenAI-compatible API, a service that's lightweight, fast, and easy to use.
Right, got it. So what's the first step in running DeepSeek on our own device? Do we need to install some kind of special software?
We need to install Wasmage via a command line. It's pretty straightforward. Just copy and paste this command lcurl -ssf https divided by law to the bizar content. Com divided by wasmage divided by master divided by utils divided by install. v2 shell bash v0.14.
Okay, that sounds like a lot of code. Is it going to be hard to set up?
Not at all. Once we have Wasmage installed, we can download the quantized model file and start using Limedge to create an API server.
I'm not sure I understand. Can you give me an example of how this would work in real life?
Let's say we want to build a chatbot that can answer customer service questions. We can use DeepSeek R1 to train the model and then deploy it using Limedge.
Wow, that sounds amazing. So what kind of applications could we build with something like DeepSeek R1? I mean, are we talking about chatbots or
We can build all sorts of things, from chatbots to language translation tools, and even more complex applications like text summarization and sentiment analysis.
That's really cool. I can see how this could be used in a lot of different fields. Like, what if we were to use it for, say, medical research or something?
Absolutely. DeepSeek R1 has the potential to revolutionize all sorts of industries, from healthcare to finance to education.
Right, I see what you mean. So how do we actually get started with building our own applications using DeepSeek R1? Are there any tutorials or resources that we can use?
There are tons of resources available, from the Limedge documentation to tutorials and examples on GitHub.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it. But just to clarify, what's the difference between Limedge and, say, OpenAI? How do they compare in terms of performance and functionality?
Limedge is actually designed to be a more lightweight and efficient alternative to OpenAI. It's optimized for running on local devices or edge hardware, which makes it faster and more secure.
That sounds really cool. So what's next? How do we take this technology to the next level?
One of the most exciting things about DeepSeek R1 is its potential for customization and fine-tuning. With Limedge, we can create models that are tailored to specific use cases and industries.
Okay, I think I understand now. So what's the final step in getting started with DeepSeek R1? Is there anything else we need to do to get up and running?
It's clear. Just one more thing. We need to download the Limedge API server app and start it up using this command, lwasmage -dir -$$ gml auto deepseek -d -b -d-chat wasm -trump -template llama3 chat text -tablet llama3 chat products ties and 96 out.
Wow, that's it. I'm excited to get started and see what kind of applications we can build with DeepSeek R1. Thanks for walking me through this. It's been really helpful.
No problem. Happy to help. Remember, if you have any questions or need further guidance, just check out the Limedge documentation or reach out to the community on Discord.